welcome to the First Friday, a new initiative to help and resource people at communications sort of across Baptist Together, no matter what role you're in, whether or not you do communications day by day, or it's just something that you're interested in doing. I'm Mike Lowe, I'm the Baptist Together National Communications Manager, and Hannah will give you a wave now. Hannah Fleming-Hill is the Digital Missioner and Communications Consultant and works across Baptist Together in different ways. So just a few things just to say how this will work, sort of a maximum of an hour for those coming. And for those watching this afterwards, what you will get is this sort of the input side, and we're hoping that through the year we will get sort of a library of hopefully helpful communication information to share. So what happens is that, we'll start now, and about half an hour of input, of which it's Hannah and myself today. And then through the months, we've got various sort of special guests who've got particular expertise who will join us and give us their wisdom on certain topics. At any time, you can go to baptist.org.uk/First Friday to see who's coming. All of this, those are where those details are. For those that have registered already, don't need to re-register for any particular month. We've got your details now, and I will just contact you before each one and to just let you know that what's happening, and then you're able to come if you'd like to. I know some people, I like to make notes when I'm doing Zooms like this, which is all fine, but you don't need to do masses of notes. I will be emailing a couple of documents out to you afterwards, including the slides that Hannah and I will be sharing as well. For those that are here in the room today, do continue to share on the chat reflections and thoughts as we go through. So let's get started today. And today is very much sort of starting. It's Happy New Year, everybody. It is equipping and resourcing for the year ahead. And I think anything where you're thinking about planning ahead, I think the first thing that you need to do is actually sort of look backwards. And the way that we do our Christmas and New Year, that's really helpful. But as the slide says there, everybody here and everybody watching afterwards, you're all in slightly different contexts. You're working in different places and you've got different situations. And you really do have to think contextually and what is needed for yourself. And so sort of keep calm, work through potentially through some of the ideas that we're looking at and suggesting, but it's about doing what you can. It's not about getting everybody to a certain level or things like that. Think about what is best for your context, and ultimately we're here as Baptists trying to share the gospel, and that is always very contextual to wherever you are. So that's it. Do what you can, don't get overwhelmed, and this is part of what Hannah and I are hoping for with this, is that we will help build a bit of a community with this, so that in the conversations afterwards and between each month, we're able to help and support each other. So let's have a think about what it's like to sort of look back. And maybe this is an exercise you can do on your own or with your leadership team, however you're arranged. And to just have a look at the questions that have been shared on the side, I think are a good starting point, actually. You can go through these questions and basically doing an audit of the past year. And I think that could look at particular, perhaps liturgical events. How did Christmas, Easter, Harvest Festival go through the year? And then of course you've got particular groups as well, or maybe you put on particular community events. So I know one of our participants today did particular things in the community during Christmas. How did that work? How did the communication about that work? Did it fulfill what you were hoping for? And how does it measure against your vision and values? And I think having that as a starting point is just a really helpful thing, because otherwise there is a danger of just sort of carrying on and not questioning. I think it's also worth questioning your very regular groups as well. So maybe when I was back in local church context, we did Messy Church every month. We had a girls' brigade. We did a film night, those sorts of things. So look at what you've been doing, some of those things that you might have done for years and perhaps maybe never have questioned from a communications point of view. But that would be a really good starting point. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Hannah, and she's going to be sort of going from the looking backwards and looking forwards. Thanks, Hannah.
Sorry, now I've got to unspotlight you, respotlight myself. Right, okay. So looking back really helps then, as Mike said, to sort of inform the things that have worked well and really sort of direct how you should be going forward. So reflecting on sort of what's gone well, actually, what should you continue to do? What has worked really well? What I did get a really good response from your community. And obviously, sort of our focus is about communications and sort of particularly from my background of digital, but actually I don't think that it's just about doing it thinking about, well, what worked with social media posts, what activities, as Mike said, what sort of, you know, film nights or girls brigade stuff, what has a really good relationship, has given you a really good relationship between you and your community that you can bring online, that you can use those people to engage with. So sort of go forward in what you're doing well. It doesn't matter if no one else in your area is doing it, or if actually it's not worked for other people. If it works for you, carry on doing it. But also try to sort of challenge yourself. What could you try to do? What did you see someone else do that was really good? What did you sort of think about last year? It would be really good if we could do that, but actually we haven't got the resources this year. We haven't got the time to be able to do it. You know, what actually could you push yourself this year and try to do? And then sort of thinking about, you know, what's happening within your church family. So what are the various sort of ministries and sort of ways that people serve within your church family? What happens in your building? So not just within sort of a Sunday service and directly that the church facilitates, but actually are your buildings being used for local community groups, for, you know, is it linked with the food bank or social justice issues, or you know, anything where actually people from the community who have nothing to do with your church, what are they doing where they come into the building? But also across your local community. So actually, is there stuff happening? So recently, thinking sort of particularly for me, we had in a nearby town a statue that was put up to celebrate a local person for sort of service that they'd done to the community and people during the war. And actually it was a really lovely way for the community to come together and actually share sort of something in celebration in a time where actually there's a lot of discouraging things going on at the moment, but actually we can sort of go, that happened and that was really inspiring, let's celebrate it now, and actually how can we see that to encourage us now? And even though that happened on site somewhere, actually it's a really wonderful story to share online, and so many more people can get involved in that way then. And what can you use to tell stories? So, you know, obviously we have the greatest story that's ever been told, and also we have a book full of wonderful stories, and we have teams and groups and sort of wonderful people who are doing wonderful things, sharing sort of, actually who probably aren't sharing the stories that would be really encouraging and inspiring and challenging for people to hear. So actually, what's going on in your community that actually you can share? And I'll say it again because I don't think it hurts. For me, okay, I'm not a minister, so I'm probably going to upset a few people. But I think it's really important, particularly with digital communications, is to not just sell a Sunday and not this sort of focus that actually it's just about coming to a building on a Sunday. That is hugely important, and I'm not sort of discounting that. But actually the fact that digital allows us to do so much more and be able to share with those who wouldn't come in the building, or be able to keep connected the 165 hours of the rest of the week that people are not in the building. So actually, what can you do to build relationships with those people and tell stories that way? So thinking strategically, I mean, it's not as fun. I don't enjoy this as much, though it's quite nice when they're done. I do prefer the sort of going out and creating content and going out and seeing things and taking pictures and videos and stuff. But thinking strategically and actually planning in advance really, really helps with thinking about what type of content, what can you do, on what platforms will you do. And actually, then when we're in the sort of midst of Easter and Christmas, when it's really busy and you don't have time to sort of really stretch your imagination and think, oh, let's be really creative and put this sort of short film together or this photography series together. Actually, because you're able to think about it a bit more in advance, it does help rather than just doing things kind of sporadically or sort of as you have the time. So the first thing I really say is think about building a calendar. And that sort of, it falls into a couple different forms of it. So actually thinking about what are the things that need to be considered, what are the things that you need to bear in mind that are happening throughout the year that will affect the way that you communicate, how you communicate, what you're communicating, and possibly the language as well. So obviously thinking kind of the liturgical calendar, and actually what are the key dates within the church's year that need to be considered. So you know, Christmas we've just had, we're now I think into Epiphany, I think, is that right? Is that yesterday or today? I don't know my dates so well. And then we'll have obviously Lent and Easter, and then sort of, you know, even things like remembrance or harvest and stuff like that. So actually knowing what's coming up really helps you to sort of think, actually, what could we potentially think about a sermon series, or you know, put a particular focus with the type of thing that we're wanting to share online. Or even with our community of going, actually it'd be really lovely as we come into summer, is to have pictures of our favourite place around the church, so that when people come into the building, actually they can see what we love about our community and what we love about our sort of local area, that actually encourages people to go out then beyond the church, because actually the church is encouraging people to go out then as well. So yeah, so liturgical dates are really important. Then obviously thinking nationally, so I know a big one that happened over Christmas was that the football final was on probably what a lot of people would have had their carol service on. So actually just knowing some of those dates actually might help people to prepare and be less kind of reactionary of going, goodness, we've got 2 weeks, we might have to reschedule. A big thing obviously for this year now is the coronation. So actually, is that something that we can address in how certain things that we're sharing online, could we link it in with the youth work or with children's work? Could we actually think about sermon series or sort of Bible studies that focus on the King? Because obviously we have the King of Kings. So, you know, actually there's a lot of kind of links between actually what's happening with what is what we would do, but actually we can create a bigger link. And then obviously thinking local, what's happening in your local community, if you've got a marathon on that might affect or a race or something that might affect road closures. Again, that's something that you need to make sure that you're sharing out online or within your community, within your church family, of going, don't forget, in 2 weeks time you can't access the church by vehicle because the roads are closed. So I know it sounds a lot to do, but actually it's worth it, of just thinking then, right, what do we need to piece together? What do we need to work around? So I always say doing it in sort of four different formats of a year's calendar. And this is essentially, it's the same as like a normal calendar of like the date and something that's happening. If there's a specific time kind of, but sort of actually what are the key dates we need to be thinking about? And you don't need to go into like big detail, but just coronation, Baptist Assembly, Christmas, carol service, just so that you know, right, this month's busy, this month's a bit quieter or whatever. Then thinking term and actually going, well, what are the sermon series we're doing? What activities are happening within the church building, or, you know, within the church family that actually are quite important? Again, you don't need to go into a lot of detail, but it just sort of highlights actually how is this interlinking within the church. Then going into monthly, and this is where you start to get a bit more in detail about it. Actually, right, what are the things we really need to be highlighting on certain days? What platforms will we be sharing them on? Actually, what things do we need to be creating in advance? And then going into week, which actually is then, this is the copy we're going to use, this is the link we're going to use, this is the photo we're going to use, and it's going out sort of whether you set, I just do kind of AM or PM times, I don't set a kind of specific right on 11:25, but just having a kind of in more in detail, so that, because I appreciate that for a lot of people it is, well, probably for most of you here, it is you doing all of the work of this. And I think with everything that's happened over the last few years, it is sensible to not assume that some things just might happen. And actually, it's good to have a kind of backup plan, or at least allow other people access so that actually they know what's happening, that there's in this way, as Mike said, use other people as well, so that actually you've got a team that you're able to really pull together. It's not just one person doing everything. Anyway, I'm going to move on because I'm aware of time. So once you've got your calendar, actually, that really helps to just direct what you're going to do for the rest of the year in terms of not just digital, but in your communications plan. Think about your audience. So who are you currently reaching? Is it only the church family? Is it more community? And, how are you reaching them? And who do you want to reach? Actually, if you want to reach a lot more families in your communities, what do you actually need to do to get in their face effectively? Where are the spaces that they are? What do they want to see, and where will they be? And I don't mean necessarily where on site will they be, even though it's useful to know where to put up posters, but actually, sort of, what platforms are they on? What spaces do they engage with? And then that sort of helps to inform your content of actually what styles of content work best on what platforms. So, videos are really good on Facebook. It's also visual stuff's really good on Instagram. However, text-driven stuff isn't so great on Instagram, but actually there are ways of making it work. And then thinking, what can you feasibly create? It would be wonderful if we could all create kind of weekly testimonial videos sharing awesome stuff that's happening in the church, and maybe kind of, Spielberg level creations. However, that's really probably not feasible for people. So actually, what can you do? So if you said, actually, we'd like to just make 2 really cool videos this year that highlight the social justice work we do and shares a couple of testimonies from people throughout from the church family, that would be great. We're going to take a load of photos from around the church to highlight what we're doing now, sort of now that things are kind of back in the building. And we have a more hybrid nature of church family. So actually that helps to then decide what you're actually able to do and what you should be doing. And then again, loops back into your calendar of going, well, these are the things we need to create. We've got a bit of a quieter week. We can now, we've got the time, or we've got this thing, we need to be gathering content at this time. So thinking about using digital wisely, I could talk for so much, for much longer on this. But as I said, don't just try to use digital to sell a Sunday, because it isn't just about that. Jesus is meant to be part of our entire lives, our beings, and nothing to be hidden from him. So it shouldn't be just about, well, we're only going to push everyone to come on a Sunday, but we're not going to engage with creating a space for fellowship in whatever form that might be. We want to encourage people to grow into sort of stronger disciples. We want people to serve our communities, and we want to worship together. So how can we use these resources and tools to help facilitate that? With posting on social media, I think, to be honest, little and often is better. Little updates, a couple times a week, obviously depending on what platform and the nature of it exactly, but little and often is better than one post every month, because actually people forget you and they are less likely to engage. Whereas actually, if you're posting a couple of times a week, you're coming up on their feeds, they're more likely to engage, and therefore they will be more likely to be sort of boosted up on their feeds then when you post next time. Keep everything up to date so people know what is happening. There's a local church to me, and I was looking on their website, I think it was this morning, trying to find when the service is starting again after Christmas. The notices are all about November, and that really puts me off. I want to come to church, I don't know when you're able to meet, I don't know what's going on. Make sure that on websites in particular don't have anything from Easter last year. Make sure that you change things up as soon as they happen. Share photos if it's like, we had a lovely Christmas service, here you go. But make sure that you change things, and in a new year, everyone's sort of all over the place, they don't know what's happening. Really highlight, yes, we're gathering again, and here's where you can meet with us on site, online, hybrid, we're doing these groups and this and this. So just make sure everything's up to date, and there is nothing wrong with highlighting that again on social media. Put updates again on Facebook saying we're going to be meeting again on Sunday after Christmas, and share that a few times so that people do know, and share in sort of other things as well, though, so it's not just always come to church on Sunday. And then thinking kind of what can cross over from on-site to online to on-site and on-site to online. I've kind of covered that already, but actually it's not just about online being a completely separate space. They do really need to interweave with each other, because again, it's not communications in one way. How you communicate on-site within your church family should also be echoed with how you communicate with your community, local community, with your online community, and vice versa. I'm going to whiz through this. You will get it. Actually, no, I'll do it now quickly. Hopefully. So we have put together a big list of everything that you might need to create content, and whether that is online, on-site, whether that is long form, short form, video, photography. We've put together a big list of things and of resources, and I have just shared the handout, and Mike will email the handout as well, but I'm sure many of you are familiar with them already, but there are sort of various tools, from creating content to visual or audio assets to actually editing things, to then actually managing social media management tools. Actually researching is always good to know what kind of the topics that people are asking, especially thinking of post-Christmas, people have engaged a bit with church. Actually, what are people asking about prayer, about Jesus, about church? And actually teams, so thinking about kind of actually how we're managing resources. So it, in a way, I really recommend people using Google Drive or things like Trello, where you can sort of have kind of remote working spaces where people can sort of access things without it constantly needing to be emailed. And then, well, you've got version 2, I've got version 5, but I've already edited version 4, and it's all just then gets quite complicated. And then thinking kind of actually storage and how people can then access things. So don't worry if you haven't written them all down, they are all on the list. So further resources. Mike has got an awesome list of a couple of resources that we're going to work now that we've put this little program together. We will be updating that space and be giving Mike lots more things to put in there. So Mike's got that page on the BU website. We then did last year also a couple-hour webinar on getting started with digital church communications. And then through my work with Southwest Baptist Association, sorry, I'm going to put a load of links now in the chat. We've got a load of webinars that I've done with Southwest Baptist Association. And then actually, if you just need a little bit of guidance on content itself, I have put together on my website a content idea. So 50 different types of content, content post ideas, and a content planner template, which you can access for free on there. So those are some sort of additional resources. Yes, the links will be emailed out. That'll be all in the slides, don't worry. So 2 minutes early because I did race through that last minute. Thank you for joining us today, and I will hand back over to Mike to close us now.